Hi everyone. So you should have now watched both of those video interpretations of the rebellion of 1798. And you can see in the blue box here, you've just got a reminder about the things you should have jotted down. It may be that you want to plot those now into a table such as the one I've got below. So key people. So William Drennan came up, William Orr, Wolfe Tone, obviously. So which interpretations mentioned which people? Statistics, including dates. So did they give you any numbers, fractions, proportions? Did they give you any key dates that be useful? The impact of previous events, that definitely comes up. And what does the interpretation feel as some of the main causes? And then once you've got all that kind of detail just jotted down, overall, what did you think the focus of that interpretation was? Did they focus more on religious issues? Or did they focus more on economic issues, for example? And then you were trying to summarise the interpretation in no more than 37 words. So if you've not done that yet, can you please do that now? So pause me before you go any further and just kind of sum up some of the key information that you got from watching those videos. So I'm hoping that you were jotting down as you were going along. And I will see you on the next slide. Okay, hi everyone. So the next slide is here's one we prepared earlier. Now I've actually got my interpretations the wrong way around. I'm sorry. That's the beauty of trying to do these lessons remotely. So apologies for that. Interpretation B on the right hand side of the table here is actually the first video that you guys watched. So we'll start with that. So this is just a kind of chat through some of the things you might have noticed, and hopefully you've got even more information than this. So on the right hand side of the table here, we've got the focus. It seemed to me that they focus particularly on religion because they focus very strongly on the Presbyterians in Ulster, that they had a vision because they were dissenters, they were non-Church of Ireland Protestants, that they felt like a separate group. And they gave an interesting statistic saying that not just Catholics, but Catholics and Presbyterians made up 4/5 of the population of Ireland. So there was a stat there for you. They focused particularly on the capture and execution of William Orr, and that, remember Orr became the rallying cry for the rebellion, according to them. Although I'm not sure that people in Wexford were shouting that. And they describe him as the first Presbyterian martyr. Interestingly enough, they mention the minister's son, William Drennan, as being very much the driving force behind this rebellion. They don't focus on Wolfe Tone at all. He kind of gets a bit of a mention, and that's it. So Drennan's much more important. It was Drennan that started the Society of the United Irishmen in 1791. He had the ideas, he had the vision that he wanted to unite all Irish. Because he was Presbyterian, he felt that he understood the grievances that Catholics felt as well. That they saw themselves as, a kind of a whole group that were being, discriminated against by the Anglican Protestant English. And they mention Tone, and they say all he did was kind of rebranded the group. He wasn't as instrumental as Drennan. They focus on the American War, and they particularly focus on the fact that it created an idea of republicanism, and that was what Drennan and the other United Irishmen were trying to achieve in Ireland, of course, was an independent Irish republic. And they focus on the French Revolution, and they say, look, the Irish even marched in celebration of Bastille Day. So the second video, which is on the left-hand side of the table here, I think, in my opinion, focus more on political issues. And they said those political issues, which were who ruled Ireland, then had a knock-on effect on religion and socio-economic issues. So social to do with how people live, the economy, how much money is swilling around in Ireland at that time. They definitely focus on Wolfe Tone. He's a leading figure in the rebellion. He's the tactician. He's the one that decides what happens and when. He's the one that goes to Ireland and convinces the Directory to launch an invasion of Ireland. And they even go over to Paris, don't they? And they walk around the gardens and they imagine how Tone must have felt when he got the okay from the French government that they were going to help. So there's a huge focus on the role played by Wolfe Tone. And then there is a similarity. They also talk about the American War of Independence and the French Revolution. And they say, they lit the spark. So they see them more as trigger causes than long-term causes, maybe. And they say, actually, most of the Irish rebels fighting in 1798 joined the rebellion in that year. These were not people who joined the United Irishmen in 1791 because they truly believed in a change of leadership in Ireland. they suggest that actually the bulk of the Catholics that got involved in this rebellion did so because of their poor socio-economic conditions. So the pressure on land, the difficulties of surviving in Ireland, the lack of any kind of social mobility or, you know, chance to better yourself, the lack of education, all this kind of stuff. That was what motivated the mass of the population to get involved. It wasn't necessarily just about religion. So slightly contrasting, there's some similarities, there's some differences. You're never going to get at this level a completely contrasting set of interpretations, because no historian worth their salt would write something that was ridiculously one-sided. It wouldn't be published, it wouldn't be seen as valid. So your job is to pick out the nuances and to really sift through the differences. So we've tried to get you to practice that skill today by using videos. Obviously, as we move on, we'll also use written interpretations, but the way you approach it is the same. You look out for the key facts, the key things you notice, and then in your own mind, you look for an overall focus, and then you also try to summarize, you know, as far as you can see, what's the interpretation here. So that's what we've tried to get you to do. So picking out features from the video, thinking to yourself, is it a religious focus? Is it a political focus? And then finally doing that short summary. Once you've done that, of course, there's another little bit of writing that goes with today's lesson, because this is history. So a little bit. So what we'd like you to do, once you're happy with your table and you've kind of summed up in your own mind the interpretations, we want you to answer the question there: which interpretation seems more convincing? So I've labelled them A and B. If you want to call them video 1 and video 2, that's absolutely fine. It doesn't matter. It's just really getting you thinking about what do you think's the better view of all of this? Which do you think gives a more balanced and realistic view of events? It might be helpful to tackle this like a P paragraph. So your opening point is, you know, I find interpretation 1 more convincing. Your evidence then is the facts that you picked out. So what's the evidence in that interpretation that you felt was particularly truthful? And then your explanation is why. So think about the focus and the overall message. So why is it that interpretation overall kind of appeals to you more? So it's just a little bit of practice of getting an opinion, because you have to make a judgment on this. Practice getting a judgment down on paper. It's nobody's going to, you know, laugh at you or say, oh, that's the wrong interpretation. Both of them are entirely valid. It's just a different way of looking at the events. So you have to be bold and you have to be prepared to come down on one side or the other. And you can acknowledge that neither is perfect, but you have to like one more than the other. You can't say, well, they're just both as good as each other. No, sorry, it's history. We need you to have an opinion. So P paragraph. You can pause me there. I'm just going to go on to the final slide and just make sure that we're happy that we've done all of our success criteria today. So we're looking at interpretations of 1798. So you should have defined a historical interpretation. You should now have summarised the key parts of both of the interpretations, picking out facts, summarising the focus. And the final part is that P paragraph you've hopefully written, which is I can judge which one I found most convincing with reasons. So brilliant. If you've done all of that, that's great. You're well on your way to just starting off the skills necessary for this exam. So that's a good piece of work this morning. I hope you enjoyed it. It's always nice to have a load of videos to watch, and I'll see you guys later in the week.